So this is Ines. I'm going to explain to you how our REST API that we created for Rocket Elevator works. So I'm going first to show you how it works, then I will explain the code later. So for example, here for the elevators, if I want to get any elevators information, I can get elevators, and let's say like this elevator is inactive, number one, and I can change that one, and let's say if we want it to be active, I can change the status and go back and see my elevator, so it become active, so I can get all the list of elevators that are inactive, and I can get all the list of elevator that are in intervention, or that are in intervention. So for the batteries, I can get all the batteries if I want to. I have to remove two. I can get all the batteries, and let's say like I want, for instance, like change the number 2 or the number 1. I want to make it online, let's say. First of all, let's look if our number 1 was online, so I want to put it offline. Okay, I want to put it offline, and I can go back and check our number 1 elevator, how it is. And here it's become offline. So for the column is the same, and for the building I can get all the list of the building if I want to. And for the building that has battery or elevator or column that are in intervention, so here is the list of those buildings. And for the lead, I can get all the lead if I want, all the lead that I have in my database, or I can get only the lead that for the last 30 days. So I'm going to show you in the code how it works. So first of all, I have my models that we generated from our previous work that are in my SQL database, and here we have our controllers that we have defined our different endpoint, and here we have a database context DB, which is which contain the class that coordinates the entity framework functionality for a data model. And let's say like for here in the read, for example, in controller we have decided to get our endpoint to get only the last 30 days, and we have here is our method how we did do this. And I'm going to let you one explain to you about the graphical. Thank you.
So for the GraphQL part of this week's project, we first had to go back into last week's project and modify the data warehouse. So we created a new table called fact interventions with the required fields. Then it updated the schema right there. And then we also had to generate some random data to be able to query from that table. So here we have a simple rig task that will essentially loop through each building inside of the inside of the MySQL database, and then create some interventions depending on which status is the column, or well which status is the elevator, the column, and then the battery. So this is the rake task. Then on the GraphQL part, so this is the new Rails API app. We generated the app as an API in Rails. We used the gem here. We used the gem GraphQL and then graphical Rails to be able to build GraphQL queries, and then graphical is basically the GUI of GraphQL. So here we have the query type, which is where the base query will start from. So here we have the buildings, address, batteries, and so on and so forth. Inside of the building type, we have to generate basically object and also models. The models will be what the object refer to be able to fetch the data from, and this is the type, the object, I mean, the type object. So here are all the fields that are present inside of the database, and this is those are literally methods to be able to query. So the details method will essentially find a specific building detail with the object ID. And the customer is pretty much the same. It'll find the customer specified with the object ID. So that's pretty much it for every object type. And if we go into Postman here, here we have the link of the deployed app on Heroku, and here we have the three different queries that were asked in the documentation. So we got the first question here. We click send, and it will return to me an intervention, the building address, and then the start date, and then the end date. So for any specified intervention, it'll give you this data right there. Then we also have the second query. If we go there, so this with a specified building ID, it will give the address, the interventions specified with that building, and the customer information of that building. So here we go. So at that specified building, we had three different interventions. We got the start and end date, the result, and also the information of the customer here. And if we go in the third query, so here we specify an employee ID. It'll give the first name, last name, the count of the amount of intervention specified assigned to that employee, and then the list of all intervention with the building address and some detail inside of the building detail table. So here we have David Boutin has 10 interventions, and these are all the interventions. We have ID 2, 3, 12, 15, and they all have their addresses and the detail inside of the building table. So the contractor name of that building is Oswaldo Lush something, I can't pronounce that name, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the GraphQL.